The Wyoming sun hung low, casting a golden haze over the rolling plains as Owen Prescott gripped the deed to his new land, a 50-acre spread gifted by a stranger in Cheyenne just 3 days ago. The paper, crisp despite its weathered edges, promised a fresh start after years of drifting. But as Owen rode toward the weathered cabin nestled against a stand of cottonwoods, a chill crept up his spine. Smoke curled from the chimney of a house that was supposed to be abandoned. The stranger, a silver-haired man named Daniel Harkness, had approached him outside a saloon, his eyes glinting with urgency. "Take this land, son," he'd said, pressing the deed into Owen's calloused hands. "It's more than it seems, but it's yours if you're brave enough to claim it." Owen, down to his last dollar, hadn't questioned the offer. Free land in 1875 was a dream too rare to refuse. Now, as he tethered his horse to a sagging fence post, he noticed signs of life. Fresh hoofprints in the dirt, a stack of chopped wood, and a faint hum coming from the cabin. He stepped onto the creaking porch, his hand resting on the revolver at his hip. The door swung open before he could knock, revealing a man with a weathered face and eyes like storm clouds. "You must be Prescott," the man said, his voice low and guarded. "I'm Jacob Penrose. This is my home." Owen held up the deed, confusion warring with suspicion. "Daniel Harkness gave me this land, said it was empty, free and clear." Jacob's jaw tightened, and behind him, 2 figures emerged from the shadows. A woman with braided hair and a boy no older than 10, both staring at Owen with defiance. "Harkness had no right to give away what's ours," Jacob said, stepping closer. "This land's been Penrose land for 20 years. Owen studied the family, noting the patched clothes and the rifle leaning against the wall. They weren't squatters. The cabin was too lived in, the land too cared for. "If this is yours, why'd Harkness hand me a deed?" he asked. Jacob's wife Ruth spoke up, her voice steady but cold. "Because Daniel Harkness has been trying to bury our past along with this place." She gestured toward the floor, where a trap door was barely visible. "Luke Heath, a worn rug. There's something under this cabin he doesn't want found." As Owen's eyes followed her gesture, a distant rumble of hoofbeats echoed across the plains, growing louder by the second. Now, as the rumble of approaching hoofbeats grew louder, Owen stood shoulder to shoulder with Jacob Penrose on the creaking porch, the late afternoon sun glinting off the distant riders' spurs. Ruth and young Luke Penrose waited inside, the trapdoor Luke Heath the rug, a silent reminder of secrets yet to be uncovered. Owen counted 3 riders, their silhouettes sharp against the dusty horizon. "Friends of yours?" he asked, his hand hovering near his revolver. Jacob's eyes narrowed, his voice low. "Not friends. Likely men sent by Harkness to make sure we're gone." The riders slowed, fanning out to block the trail leading from the cabin. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his cheek, dismounted with a predator's grace. "Jacob Penrose," he called, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Time's up. This land's been sold and you're trespassing." Owen stepped forward, holding up the deed. "I'm Owen Prescott, and this paper says I own this place, signed by Daniel Harkness himself." The scarred man, Miles Klein, as Jacob whispered, laughed, a harsh sound like gravel under boots. "That deed's as real as fool's gold, stranger. Harkness has been selling this land to anyone desperate enough to buy his lies." Jacob's hand tightened on the porch railing. "Miles works for the Cattlemen's Association. They've been after our land since they found out what's Luke Heath." "What's Luke Heath?" Owen pressed, but before Jacob could answer, Miles drew a folded document from his coat, its wax seal gleaming ominously. "This here's an eviction notice, backed by the territorial court. You Penroses got till sundown to clear out, or we drag you out." Ruth emerged from the cabin, her eyes blazing. "That court's in the association's pocket, and you know it, Miles. Our claim predates their schemes by decades." Owen's mind raced, the pieces of Daniel Harkness's strange gift falling into place. The land wasn't just a gift, it was a trap, a way to entangle him in a fight that wasn't his. Yet the Penroses, defiance stirred something in him, a memory of his own family's lost homestead back in Kansas. If you've got a legal claim, let's see it, Owen said to Jacob. Ruth hesitated, then nodded toward the trapdoor. It's down there, with the rest of our truth. As Jacob moved to lift the rug, Miles's men drew their guns, and a single shot rang out from the ridge behind the cabin. Just hours ago, Owen had challenged the eviction notice, demanding proof of the Penrose's claim, only to learn it was hidden Luke Eth, a trapdoor in the cabin floor, a secret tied to the land Daniel Harkness had gifted him. Jacob Penrose froze, his hand on the rug covering the trapdoor, as all eyes turned toward the ridge. That wasn't one of yours, was it, Miles? Owen asked, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his chest. Miles's scarred face twisted in confusion, his men gripping their revolvers tighter. No, he growled, scanning the horizon. But whoever's out there just made this a whole lot messier. Ruth pulled young Luke close, her eyes darting to the darkening hills. Could be Daniel Harkness, she whispered. He's got his own reasons to keep us quiet. Owen's mind churned. Harkness, the silver-haired stranger who'd handed him the deed, hadn't just given him land, he'd handed him a fight. The trapdoor loomed like a question mark, its secrets tying the Penroses to this land and to Harkness's schemes. We need to know what's down there, Owen said, nodding to Jacob. If it's your proof, it's our only chance. Jacob hesitated, then yanked the rug aside, revealing the weathered trapdoor. Its iron hinges creaked as he lifted it, exposing a ladder descending into darkness. A faint smell of damp earth and something metallic wafted up. Miles's men stepped closer, guns drawn, but another sound stopped them, a low whistle from the ridge, followed by the crunch of boots on gravel. Hold your fire, a voice called, rough and commanding. A lone figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man with a weathered hat and a rifle slung across his back. Name's Tobias Grant, he said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. I'm a surveyor, hired by the territorial office to settle land disputes. Heard about trouble out here. Miles's eyes narrowed. You fired that shot? Tobias nodded. Warning to keep things civil. I've seen the association's tricks before. Forged deeds, bought judges. I'm here for the truth. Jacob exchanged a glance with Ruth, hope flickering in their eyes. The truth's down there, Jacob said, pointing to the trapdoor. As Owen started down the ladder, a glint of steel caught his eye. Miles's men were circling closer, and Tobias's rifle was no longer slung across his back. Moments ago, Owen Prescott had begun his descent, spurred by Jacob Penrose's claim that proof of their ownership lay below, while surveyor Tobias Grant's arrival had halted a tense standoff with Miles Klein and his Cattlemen's Association hired guns. Owen's boots hit the earthen floor of the cellar, the air thick with the scent of damp soil and old iron. A single oil lamp flickered on a wooden crate, casting jagged shadows across walls reinforced with timber. Jacob followed close behind, his breath uneven, while Ruth and Luke stayed above, guarding the trap door with Tobias. Over here, Jacob whispered, leading Owen to a corner where a heavy canvas tarp covered something bulky. He pulled it back, revealing a locked iron chest, its surface etched with faint initials, TH 1855. My father's, Jacob said, his voice heavy. William Penrose. This holds our original deed, and something else. Owen's pulse quickened. The chest's lock was sturdy, but Jacob produced a key from his pocket, its metal worn from years of secrecy. As the lock clicked open, Miles's voice barked from above. What's taking so long, Penrose? Bring up that proof, or we start digging ourselves. Tobias's calm reply followed. Give them a minute, Klein. You want this done legal, don't you? Owen caught the surveyor's glance through the trap door, a warning to hurry. Inside the chest lay a yellow deed, its ink faded but legible, granting the land to William Penrose in 1855, long before the association's schemes. Lucitis, it was a leather journal, its pages filled with meticulous notes and maps of mineral veins snaking through the nearby hills. Silver, Jacob said, his voice barely audible. "My father found a vein richer than anything in these parts. The association's been after it ever since he died." Owen's mind flashed to Daniel Harkness's urgent gift. Had Harkness known about the silver, or was he just a pawn in a larger game? Before Owen could ask, a commotion erupted above. Boots scuffling, Ruth's sharp cry, and the unmistakable click of a revolver being cocked. "Time's up!" Miles shouted. Owen grabbed the deed and journal, stuffing them into his coat as Jacob relocked the chest. They scrambled up the ladder, emerging to find Miles's men closing in, their guns trained on Tobias, who stood firm, rifle in hand. Ruth clutched Luke, her eyes fierce. "They're not taking our home," she hissed. As Owen stepped forward, deed in hand, a new sound froze them all. Hoofbeats, fast and heavy, thundering from the darkened trail beyond the cabin. Moments ago, Miles Klein's men had drawn closer, their guns trained on Surveyor Tobias Grant, as Ruth Penrose shielded her son, Luke. Now the thunder of hoofbeats from the darkened trail beyond the cabin sent a fresh wave of dread through the group. Owen gripped the deed, its edges biting into his palm, as 5 riders burst into view, their horses lathered from a hard ride. The lead rider, a wiry man with a deputy's badge glinting in the moonlight, raised a hand to halt his men. "Hold your fire, Klein," he shouted, his voice cutting through the night like a blade. "Deputy Daniel Tanner, Territorial Law. We got word of trouble out here." Miles's scarred face twisted with fury, but he lowered his revolver slightly. "This ain't your jurisdiction, Tanner. The association's got legal claim to this land." Tobias Grant stepped forward, his rifle still at the ready. "Legal, you say? Then explain why I was hired to survey this property for the Territorial Office. Their records show no sale to the association." Owen held up the deed, its 1855 date clear even in the dim light. "This says the Penroses own this land, signed over to William Penrose 20 years ago. Your eviction notice is a fraud." Miles's men exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence wavering. Tanner dismounted, his deputies fanning out to flank Miles's group. "We've seen the association's tricks before," he said, eyeing Miles. "Forged deeds, bribed judges. Word is, you've been working with Daniel Harkness to sell land that ain't yours." Owen's stomach lurched at Harkness's name, the man who'd gifted him this land, now tied to the very men threatening the Penroses. "Harkness gave me this deed," Owen admitted. "Said it was a fresh start. Didn't mention the Penroses or the silver." Jacob's voice was low, bitter. "Harkness was my father's partner. When they found the silver vein, Harkness turned on him, got him killed in a staged accident, and started selling off our land to cover his tracks." Ruth's eyes blazed. "That journal proves it. Dates, deals, everything." Tanner's gaze sharpened. "Show me." Owen handed over the journal, its pages detailing Harkness's betrayal and the association's G. Harkness. As Tanner scanned the pages, Miles made a sudden move, lunging for the journal. A shot rang out, not from Tanner's men but from the ridge above, where a lone figure stood silhouetted against the moon. Moments ago, a shot from the ridge had stopped Miles's lunge for the journal, proving the Penroses' claim to their silver-rich land, its pages exposing Daniel Harkness's betrayal. The silhouette of the lone shooter still loomed above, a new threat in an already tense standoff. Owen's heart pounded as he scanned the ridge, the deed and journal tucked safely in his coat. Tanner's deputies trained their rifles on Miles's men, who froze, their hands hovering over their guns. "Nobody move!" Tanner barked, his eyes flicking to the ridge. "Show yourself up there." The figure stepped forward, descending slowly, revealing a woman in a weathered duster, her rifle steady. "I'm Lila Harkness," she called, her voice sharp as a winter wind. "Daniel Harkness's daughter, and I've got my own score to settle with these snakes." Jacob Penrose stiffened, his hand tightening on his own rifle. "Your father sold us out, Lila. Why should we trust you?" Lila stopped at the edge of the clearing, her eyes locking on Jacob's. "Because he sold me out too. After he killed your father, he hid me away, said it was for my safety. But I found his letters, proof he's been working with the association to steal this land and its silver. She pulled a bundle of papers from her saddlebag, their edges crumpled but marked with Harkness's distinctive scrawl. Owen's mind raced. Daniel Harkness, the man who'd gifted him the deed, had woven a web of deceit stretching from the Penroses to his own daughter. Why shoot now? Owen asked, his voice steady despite the weight of her revelation. Lila's gaze hardened. I've been tracking Miles. He's the association's enforcer, the one who makes sure folks like the Penroses disappear. That journal's my ticket to exposing my father and his cronies. Miles laughed, a brittle sound. You're a fool, girl. Those papers won't mean a thing without a witness to back them up. Tanner stepped forward, holding the journal. I'd say we've got plenty of witnesses. And this journal names names. Harkness, the association, even a judge in Cheyenne. Miles's men shifted uneasily, sensing the tide turning. Ruth clutched Luke close, her voice fierce. What's in that cellar isn't just our deed, it's proof of murder. William Penrose's blood is on Harkness's hands. Lila nodded grimly. And mine's the testimony to prove it. As Tanner signaled his deputies to disarm Miles's men, a low rumble echoed from the trail. More riders, their lanterns flickering in the dark. Minutes ago, Lila's shot from the ridge had halted Miles's attempt to seize the journal, proving the Penroses' claim and Harkness's betrayal. But now, the flickering lanterns of new riders approaching from the trail reignited the threat. Owen tightened his grip on the deed, his eyes scanning the darkness as 6 riders emerged, their horses slowing to a trot. The lead rider, a man with a silver beard and a marshal's badge gleaming under the moonlight, raised a hand. "Marshal Gideon Holt," he called, his voice steady but commanding. "Territorial office sent me to investigate land fraud in these parts." Tanner lowered his rifle slightly, relief flickering across his face. "You're just in time, Marshal. We've got evidence of a conspiracy right here." Miles Klein's scarred face paled, but he forced a smirk. "Holt, you're out of your depth. The association's got friends in high places, higher than your badge." Holt dismounted, his spurs jingling as he approached, his deputies forming a tight line behind him. "Friends like Daniel Harkness?" he asked, eyeing Lila. Word reached Cheyenne about his double dealing, selling land he didn't own, forging deeds, and worse. Lila stepped forward, her bundle of letters trembling in her hands. "My father's been working with the association for years. These letters tie him to William Penrose's murder and the theft of this land's silver." Jacob Penrose's voice was raw with anger. "That journal from our cellar names Harkness and his cronies. They killed my father to get this land." Owen handed the journal to Holt, who scanned its pages, his expression darkening with each line. "Dates, payments, even a map of the silver vein," Holt muttered. "Enough to hang half the association." Ruth, holding Luke close, added, "The deed in that chest proves we've owned this land since 1855. Harkness has been selling it out from under us." Miles's men shifted nervously, their guns still holstered but their eyes darting for an escape. Holt's deputies tightened their circle, cutting off any retreat. "You're all under arrest," Holt declared, nodding to Miles, "for fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to murder." As the deputies moved to bind Miles's wrists, a sharp crack split the air, a gunshot from the cabin's roof. Owen spun, spotting a glint of metal in the shadows above. Someone had been watching, waiting, and now they'd made their move. Moments ago, a gunshot from the cabin's roof shattered the fragile calm, its echo bouncing off the hills as all eyes turned upward to the shadowed figure lurking above. Owen's hand instinctively went to his revolver, his heart racing as he scanned the roofline. The moonlight revealed a man crouched low, his rifle glinting as he reloaded. "Hold your fire," Holt shouted, his deputies pivoting to aim at the new threat. Miles Klein, wrists half-bound, laughed bitterly. "Looks like you missed one of my boys, Marshal." But the figure on the roof didn't move like one of Miles's hired guns. His motions were too deliberate, too solitary. "Show yourself," Tanner called, his voice steady despite the tension. The man stood slowly, revealing a lean frame and a weathered face partially hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. "I ain't with Klein," he said, his voice rough but clear. "Name's Ezra Cole. I worked for William Penrose years ago. Been watching this place since he died, keeping Harkness's men from sniffing too close." Jacob Penrose stepped forward, his eyes wide with recognition. "Ezra? You're the one who warned us when Harkness's men came poking around last spring." Ezra nodded, climbing down a rickety ladder from the roof. "Found that journal and deed in the cellar after William's accident. Hid him there to keep him safe. Harkness has been hunting me ever since." Lila Harkness's face paled, her letters trembling in her hands. "My father knew you were out here," she whispered. "He said you'd stolen from him." Ezra's laugh was sharp. "Stole? I kept his secrets from burying the Penroses." Holt flipped through the journal, his expression grim. "Your testimony, Ezra, ties Harkness to William Penrose's murder. Combined with these letters and the deed, it's ironclad." Owen glanced at Ruth, who clutched Luke tightly, her eyes fierce with hope. "Will it be enough to stop the association?" she asked. Holt nodded. "With Ezra's word and this evidence, we'll take down Harkness and his backers in Cheyenne." Miles's smirk faded as Holt's deputies finished binding his men. But as they prepared to ride for the territorial capital, a faint glow flickered on the horizon, a line of torches moving steadily toward the cabin. "More of Harkness's men," Ezra warned, raising his rifle. "They ain't here to talk." The group braced themselves, the weight of the Cellar's secrets, now their only weapon against the approaching firelight. Moments ago, Ezra's shot from the roof had revealed his role as the Penroses' secret protector. But now a line of torches flickered on the horizon, signaling more riders closing in with deadly intent. Owen gripped his revolver, the cold metal grounding him as the torchlight grew brighter, revealing 8 riders in tight formation. Their horses' hooves churned the earth, kicking up dust that glowed in the moonlight. Holt's deputies fanned out, rifles ready, while Miles Klein, bound and kneeling, smirked despite his predicament. "You think you've won?" he taunted. "Those are Daniel Harkness's best men. They'll burn this place to ash before letting you walk away with that journal." Jacob Penrose stood firm, his voice low. "They've been after our land since my father found that silver vein. They won't stop now." Ruth pulled Luke behind her, her eyes scanning the approaching riders. "We've got the truth on our side," she said, nodding to the journal in Holt's hands. Lila Harkness clutched her father's incriminating letters, her face a mix of guilt and resolve. "If they're my father's men, they'll want these too." Holt handed the journal to Tanner. "Get this to the territorial capital no matter what, it's our only shot at justice." Tanner nodded, slipping the journal into his saddlebag as he mounted his horse. But before he could ride, the lead rider, a hulking figure with a black hat, raised a hand, halting his men 50 yards from the cabin. "Jacob Penrose," he bellowed. "Hand over the deed and journal, and we might let your family walk away." Ezra Cole spat in the dirt. "That's Mason Burr, Harkness's right hand. He don't make deals, he makes graves." Owen's mind raced, the weight of Daniel Harkness's deceitful gift pressing heavier. The Cellar's secrets had turned this land into a battleground, and he was caught in the middle. "We're not giving up anything," Owen called back, stepping forward. "This land belongs to the Penroses, and we've got proof." Burr laughed, a chilling sound. "Proof don't matter when you're dead." He signaled, and his men raised rifles, their torchlight casting eerie shadows. Holt's deputies braced for a fight, but Ezra's sharp whisper cut through the tension. "There's another way out, through the cellar. Tunnels lead to the creek." As Burr's men dismounted, their guns gleaming, a faint creak echoed from the cabin's floorboards below. The creak from the cabin's floorboards heard moments ago sent a jolt through the group as Burr's men dismounted, their rifles glinting in the firelight. Owen spun toward the cabin, his heart pounding. "Someone's inside," he whispered, gripping his revolver. Jacob Penrose's eyes widened, but Ruth, clutching Luke, hissed, "It's not one of us." Holt signaled his deputies to hold their ground as Burr's voice boomed again. "Last chance, Penroses. Hand over the papers or we burn you out." The creak came again, sharper from Luke, the trapdoor. Ezra Cole's face hardened. That's no accident. Someone's in the tunnels. Without a word, Owen and Jacob bolted inside, leaving Holt and Tanner to face Burr's men. The trapdoor was ajar, the oil lamp's flicker revealing fresh scuff marks on the ladder. Owen descended first, his boots thudding against the earthen floor. The cellar's iron chest stood untouched, but a narrow tunnel entrance, hidden behind a stack of crates, gaped open. "Someone's been down here," Owen said, his voice low. Jacob's jaw clenched. Harkness's men must have known about the tunnels all along. A faint shuffle echoed from the tunnel, followed by the glint of a knife in the shadows. Owen raised his revolver, but a voice rasped, "Hold it, Prescott. It's me, Daniel Harkness." The silver-haired man stepped into the lamplight, his face gaunt, eyes wild with desperation. "I didn't want this," he stammered. "The association forced my hand. They threatened Lila." Owen's grip tightened. "You gave me this land to trap me in your mess. Why?" Harkness's hands shook as he gestured to the chest. "That journal. It's got more than my betrayal. It names every man pulling strings in the association. Judges, bankers, all of them. I hid it to protect myself, but they're done waiting." Outside, a gunshot cracked, followed by Holt's shout. "Burr's moving in!" Jacob grabbed Harkness's collar. "You killed my father for silver, and now you're here for what? Redemption?" Harkness's eyes darted to the tunnel. "Escape! There's a way out to the creek. We can all make it if you trust me." Owen hesitated, the weight of Harkness's deceit heavy against the chaos above. The tunnel offered a chance, but trusting the man who'd sparked this fight felt like a deal with the devil. As another gunshot rang out, a shadow moved deeper in the tunnel, and a low, guttural laugh echoed back. Above, Marshal Gideon Holt and Deputy Daniel Tanner held off Mason Burr's men, their gunfire punctuating the chaos as Lila Harkness, Ruth, and Luke waited anxiously near the trapdoor. Owen's revolver steadied on Harkness, the lamplight casting jagged shadows across the traitor's gaunt face. "Who's in the tunnel?" Owen demanded, his voice sharp as the gunfire above. Harkness's eyes darted nervously toward the dark passage. "One of Burr's men, likely," he whispered. "They've been watching the cabin, waiting for me to show." Jacob's grip on Harkness's collar tightened. "You led them here, you snake." Harkness shook his head frantically. "I came to warn you. The association knows the journal names them all. They'll kill us all to bury it." The laugh came again, low and mocking, followed by the scrape of boots on dirt. Owen motioned for Jacob to guard Harkness and crept toward the tunnel, his heart pounding. The passage was narrow, its walls damp and reinforced with rotting timbers. A figure emerged, a wiry man with a crooked grin, a knife gleaming in his hand. "Well, well," he sneered. "Daniel Harkness, crawling back to save his hide." Owen recognized him as one of Burr's riders, a hired killer named Vance. "Drop the knife," Owen ordered, his gun trained on Vance's chest. Vance's grin widened, but he didn't move. "You're in over your head, stranger. That journal's worth more blood than you've got to spill." Above, a volley of gunfire erupted, and Ruth's voice called down, "They're breaching the porch!" Jacob dragged Harkness toward the ladder, his eyes blazing. "We can't stay here. The tunnel's our only shot." Owen hesitated, the journal and deed heavy in his coat. Trusting Harkness was a gamble, but Vance's presence meant Burr's men were already closing in. "Move!" Owen snapped, shoving Vance against the wall and disarming him. Harkness led the way into the tunnel, his steps unsteady but quick. The passage twisted downward, the air growing colder, the metallic tang of silver stronger. Jacob followed, his rifle ready, while Owen kept Vance at gunpoint. As they moved deeper, the gunfire above faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Then a faint rumble shook the tunnel walls. Loose dirt sifted from above, and a distant shout echoed through the passage. "They're collapsing the entrance." Vance laughed, his voice chilling. "You're all buried alive now." Moments ago, the rumble of falling earth had signaled Burr's men sealing the tunnel entrance, trapping them underground with the journal and deed that exposed a deadly land fraud conspiracy. Owen shoved Vance forward, his revolver pressed against the man's back, as dirt rained from the tunnel's ceiling. The lamplight flickered, casting wild shadows across the damp, timber-lined walls. "Keep moving!" Owen barked, his voice tight with urgency. Harkness stumbled ahead, his breathing ragged, leading them deeper into the passage where the air grew thick with the metallic scent of silver. Jacob's eyes burned with fury. "You knew they'd trap us, Harkness," he growled, gripping his rifle. "This your way of finishing what you started?" "I swear, I didn't know," Harkness pleaded, his voice cracking as another tremor shook the tunnel. "The creek's just ahead. There's an exit." Vance's laugh echoed again, cold and unyielding. "You're chasing ghosts, Penrose. That exit's been caved in for years." Owen tightened his grip on Vance, his mind racing. The journal in his coat, detailing Daniel Harkness's betrayal and the Cattlemen's Association's crimes, was their only leverage, if they could survive to deliver it. The tunnel sloped upward, and a faint breeze brushed Owen's face, carrying the scent of water. "There." Harkness pointed to a narrow opening where moonlight pierced the darkness, glinting off a trickle of creek water. But as they neared, a sharp crack split the air. Another collapse, closer this time. Dirt and rocks tumbled across the path, forcing Owen to dive forward, dragging Vance with him. Jacob yanked Harkness clear just as a timber beam groaned and splintered above them. Owen scrambled to his feet, coughing through the dust. The exit was mere yards away, but the tunnel was crumbling faster than they could move. "We leave him," Jacob said, nodding at Vance, who smirked despite the chaos. "He'll slow us down." Owen hesitated, the weight of his choice heavy. Letting Vance die might silence a witness, but it felt too much like Harkness's brand of betrayal. Before he could decide, a shadow moved at the tunnel's exit, a figure blocking the moonlight, rifle in hand. "You're not going anywhere," a voice rasped, low and unfamiliar. Owen froze, the journal burning a hole in his coat as the figure stepped closer, their face obscured by the darkness. Moments ago, a shadowy figure with a rifle had blocked the moonlight, their rasping voice halting the group's desperate escape from the collapsing tunnel. "Lukeith, the Penrose cabin." Owen raised his revolver, the barrel steady despite the dust stinging his eyes. "Step into the light," he demanded, his voice cutting through the tunnel's eerie silence. The figure hesitated, then moved forward, revealing a weathered man with a gray mustache and a deputy's badge pinned to his vest. "Deputy Jonah Platt," he said, lowering his rifle slightly. "Heard gunfire from the cabin. Came to check on Marshal Holt." Jacob's grip on his own rifle tightened. "You with the association?" Platt shook his head. "I'm territorial law, loyal to Holt. Burr's men are circling the cabin. Holt's holding them off, but he sent me to find you." Owen's mind churned. The journal, detailing Daniel Harkness's murder of William Penrose and the association's land fraud, was their ticket to justice, but trusting Platt meant gambling with their lives. Harkness, trembling beside Jacob, whispered, "He's telling the truth. I've seen him with Holt in Cheyenne." Vance sneered, his hands bound but his voice defiant. "Don't matter who he's with. You're all dead once Burr gets that journal." The tunnel groaned again, dirt sifting from the ceiling. "We're running out of time," Owen said, shoving Vance toward the exit. Platt stepped aside, gesturing to the creek beyond, where moonlight glinted off shallow water. "Holt's got Tanner and the others pinned down," Platt said. "We need that journal to prove the association's crimes. Hand it over, and I'll get it to the territorial capital." Owen hesitated, the weight of the journal heavy in his coat. Handing it to Platt could end this, but it could also be a trap. Jacob's eyes met Owen's, a silent agreement passing between them. "We go together," Jacob said. "No one gets the journal until we're safe." Platt nodded, but as they stepped into the open air, a sharp crack split the night. A sniper shot from the ridge above the creek. Platt dove for cover, dragging Harkness with him, while Owen and Jacob dropped low, Vance laughing maniacally. "Told you Burr don't play," he taunted. Owen scanned the ridge, spotting two figures moving through the shadows, their rifles trained on the creek. The journal was their only leverage, and now it was a target painted on their backs. Moments ago, Platt had claimed loyalty to Marshal Holt, urging Owen to hand over the journal, exposing the Cattlemen's Association's crimes. But the snipers' shots, cracking through the night, cast doubt on every ally as Owen clutched the journal indeed. Owen pressed himself against a boulder, the creek's cold water soaking his boots as another bullet ricocheted off the rock, sending chips flying. Jacob crouched beside him, his rifle scanning the ridge where two shadows moved, their rifles glinting. "Burr's men!" Jacob hissed. "They're cutting us off!" Harkness, pale and trembling, huddled behind Platt, while Vance, still bound, grinned like a man who'd already won. "You're done for, Prescott," he taunted. "That journal's as good as burned." Platt signaled for silence, his eyes sharp in the moonlight. "There's a gulch 50 yards west," he whispered. "Leads to a trail Holt's men can cover. We move fast, we might make it." Owen's gut churned. Trusting Platt was a risk, but staying meant certain death. The journal, detailing Daniel Harkness's murder of William Penrose and the Association's land theft, was their only weapon, and Burr's snipers knew it. "Cover me," Owen told Jacob, then darted toward the gulch, keeping low as bullets kicked up dirt around him. Jacob fired back, his shots forcing the snipers to duck, giving Owen and Platt time to drag Harkness and Vance into the gulch's shadows. The narrow path wound through jagged rocks, the creek's gurgle masking their steps. Platt led, his rifle ready, but Owen kept a close eye on him, the weight of the journal a burning reminder of betrayal's cost. "Why's Holt trust you?" Owen asked, his voice low. Platt glanced back, his mustache twitching. "I was William Penrose's deputy before Harkness turned on him. Been waiting years to settle that score." They reached a clearing where Holt's men waited, their lanterns casting a faint glow. Marshal Holt, bloodied but unbowed, waved them over. "Tanner got the women and boy to safety," he said, eyeing the journal in Owen's hand. "That the evidence?" Owen nodded, but before he could hand it over, a horse's whinny broke the silence. From the trail behind, Mason Burr's voice roared, "You're surrounded, Prescott! Hand over the journal, or we cut you down." The lanterns flickered as Holt's men raised their rifles, but a rustling in the brush nearby sent a chill down Owen's spine. Moments ago, a rustling in the brush had spiked Owen's dread, the snipers on the ridge still a threat as the group faced a tightening noose. Owen's fingers tightened on his revolver, the journal's weight in his coat a reminder of the stakes, proof of Daniel Harkness's murder of William Penrose and the Cattlemen's Association's land fraud. The rustling grew louder, and a figure burst from the brush. Lila Harkness, her duster torn, a revolver in her hand. "They're flanking you," she gasped, her eyes wild. "Burr's got more men coming from the east." Holt cursed, signaling his deputies to cover the new angle, their lanterns casting jagged shadows across the rocks. Jacob's gaze burned into Lila. "Why risk your neck for us?" he demanded. Lila met his stare, her voice steady despite her ragged breathing. "My father's crimes don't define me. That journal can bury him and the association. I want it done." Owen glanced at Platt, who nodded grimly. "She's been feeding us information on Harkness for months," Platt said. "She's clean." Burr's voice roared again, closer now. "Last chance, Prescott. The journal, or we burn the gulch." Owen's mind raced. The journal could end this, but handing it over meant trusting Burr's word, a fool's bet. Holt leaned in, his voice low. "We fight our way to the capital. Tanner's already riding with Ruth and Luke to get reinforcements. We just need to hold till dawn." Owen nodded, but Vance, still bound, laughed darkly. "You're dreaming, Marshal. Burr's got the ridge and the trail locked. You're dead men." Lila pointed to a narrow path winding up the gulch. "That leads to a ridge trail. Rough, but it'll get us past Burr's snipers." Holt hesitated, then Ag Harkness. "Move fast. Keep the journal safe." Owen led, shoving Vance ahead as Lila and Jacob covered the rear. The group scrambled up the rocky path, bullets pinging off stones as Burr's men closed in. Harkness stumbled, his face ashen, but Platt hauled him along, muttering, "You don't get to die yet." They reached the ridge, the capital a day's ride away, but a flare of torchlight below revealed Burr's men fanning out, cutting off the trail. As Owen scanned for an escape, a low hum vibrated through the ground, a tremor, like the earth itself was turning against them. Moments ago, a mysterious tremor had shaken the ground, just as Mason Burr's men, their torches blazing below, closed in to block their escape to the territorial capital. Owen steadied himself against a jagged outcrop, the journal's weight, a burning anchor as the earth's slow rumble faded. "That wasn't natural," he whispered, glancing at Jacob, whose eyes scanned the darkened ridge. "Silver mines," Jacob said grimly. "My father's maps showed old shafts under these hills. Burr's men must be blasting to trap us." Lila Harkness, her revolver steady, nodded. "My father used dynamite to collapse tunnels when he wanted to hide evidence. They're trying to bury us." Holt's voice cut through the tension. "We keep moving. The capital's our only shot." Platt shoved Vance, their bound captive, forward, while Holt's deputies covered the rear, their rifles trained on the torchlight below. Daniel Harkness, pale and sweating, muttered, "I didn't sign up for this. The association promised me protection." Owen spun on him, his voice low and fierce. "You sold out the Penroses for silver and lies. You don't get to beg now." The trail narrowed, forcing them single file along a cliff edge, the creek glinting far below. Owen led, the journal secure, but the memory of the Cellar's iron chest, holding William Penrose's secrets, gnawed at him. Had Daniel Harkness known about the silver vein when he gifted the land? Or was he just a pawn? A sudden explosion rocked the ridge, sending rocks tumbling past them. "They're blasting the trail," Platt shouted, as dust clouded the moonlight. Lila pointed to a faint path veering left. "That leads to an old miner's camp. Cover enough to hold out till dawn." Owen nodded, but Vance's mocking laugh echoed. "You'll never make it. Burr's got dynamite and men to spare." As they scrambled toward the camp, another blast shook the ground, closer this time, and a crack split the trail behind them, swallowing the path they'd just crossed. They reached the camp, a cluster of rotting shacks nestled against the cliff. Holt's men took positions, but Owen spotted a lone rider galloping from the capital's direction, a lantern swinging wildly. "Tanner!" Holt called, hope in his voice. But as the rider neared, his face revealed not Tanner, but a stranger with a cold smile, raising a rifle. Moments ago, a stranger posing as Deputy Tanner rode from the capital's direction, his cold smile and raised rifle shattering the group's hope as dynamite blasts from Mason Burr's men collapsed the trail behind them. Owen dove behind a shack, the journal secure in his coat, as the stranger's shot grazed the wood above his head. "That's Jacob Rourke," Platt shouted, returning fire. "Association's top gun. He's been hunting the Penroses for years." Jacob Penrose, crouched nearby, fired back, his bullet clipping Rourke's hat. "He killed my father's partner after the silver was found." Lila Harkness, her revolver blazing, added, "My father hired him to silence anyone who knew about the journal." Holt's deputies formed a defensive line, their lanterns flickering as Burr's men closed in from below, their dynamite blasts shaking the cliff. Daniel Harkness cowered, muttering, "I didn't know they'd go this far." Owen grabbed him, his voice fierce. "You started this, Harkness. Help us end it." Harkness's eyes darted to the journal. "There's a judge in Cheyenne, Ellsworth. He's honest. Get him the journal and the association's done." A final explosion rocked the camp, sending shrapnel flying. Rourke dismounted, his rifle trained on Owen. "Hand it over, Prescott!" he bellowed. But before Owen could respond, hoofbeats thundered from the capital's trail. Deputy Tanner with Ruth, Luke, and a posse of territorial marshals. "Rourke, stand down!" Tanner shouted, his badge gleaming. "We've got Ellsworth's warrant for the association!" Rourke hesitated, outnumbered, as Burr's men faltered below, their torches dimming. Owen stepped forward, journal raised. "This ends now," he shouted. Rourke's shot rang out, but Lila tackled Owen, the bullet missing by inches. Holt's men fired, and Rourke fell, his rifle clattering. Burr's men scattered, their dynamite spent. Hours later, Judge Ellsworth confirmed the Penroses' deed, exposing the association's fraud. Harkness and his allies were arrested. The silver vein returned to the Penroses. Owen, now a partner on the land, stood with Jacob, Ruth, and Luke, watching the sunrise. "You kept us fighting," Ruth said, her smile warm. Owen nodded. The Cellar's secret's now their triumph. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen to watch another unforgettable tale where destiny and courage collide. Don't forget to subscribe to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.